Hi there, folks. So following on from last week's video, I just wanted to put together another sort of look at Oathmark. So obviously Oathmark, tied into last week's video, is very much going to be the focus of anyone trying to do kind of like, well, me doing any first age gaming. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about the main book and some of the supplements that have come out for it as well, the expansions, and kind of how it all fits together, really. The main thing that you're going to need is the first book, which is the Oathmark Rulebook, as you can see here. Very nice tome, as you can see. Very cool. It's kind of broken down into very simple sections, really. So you have a focus on playing the game and how all that works. And in actuality, you'll find that playing the game and sort of the breakdown and stuff is actually fairly simple in reality. I mean, you know, the book is decently long, but a lot of it's given over to magic items and the army lists and all that kind of stuff as well. I would say that for the most part, the focus is very much on kind of getting you quick and easily into the game and how that all works. So, gameplay-wise, I've talked about it a little bit before, but it's a very simple game, really. When someone is striking, you're going to be taking the combat dice for them. And then you'll modify things either with the fight or the shoot against their defense of the unit. And that kind of gives you your target number on your D10s. Those are then modified by a set of different things. So, for example, when you're shooting, you'll see there's modifiers here that apply to the way that your unit is shooting. So, for example, if you have more ranks, then the difficulty of the damage goes down. If you have, if the enemy is in different positions or in cover and all that kind of stuff, the difficulty goes up. And then once you've managed to hit that target number and roll the dice, you'll do basic hits. So if you equal the target number, you'll get exactly 1 damage. If you exceed it by 5, you do 2. You exceed it by 10, you get 3. Sometimes it's a little hard to be getting that +3, but that kind of just works out how casualties are done. Casualties are mostly done in a similar way to other war games, so you'll be looking at kind of unit removal and all that kind of stuff as well. And that kind of gives you the thrust and the cut and thrust, I suppose, of combat. The other thing to remember, obviously, is that this is a game of maneuvering and rank and file battles, and so the focus is very much on having kind of large units wheeling around each other and all that kind of stuff. They have made it a lot easier than other games, I will say, because you basically just have these maneuvers that you see. So you've got pivot, where it pivots around the central space in the model, which is your officer. You've got a wheel where it kind of hinges on the corner. And then you have about face, obviously, which is where you turn around and all that kind of stuff. And then everything else is based off actions that you do. So you've got combat and shooting and all that kind of stuff. The other really nice thing about the game that I mentioned a little bit in the previous video is the way that command points work. So in the game, you actually have activations that you need to get. So activations is where you roll to see if the unit will actually activate, basically. And you can modify that by the use of command and all that kind of thing as well, thanks to different models and stuff. And the actual basics of kind of moving and fighting and shooting and stuff is fairly simple, really. I think a lot of the intricacy comes in the different units that you use and the campaign nature of the game as well. But in similar kind of like McCullough style, very much put together a game that is simple to learn and fun to play. So this kind of breaks down the different units and stuff. You'll tend to find that you'll have kind of your standard infantry ranked up in big blocks of 20, well, between 1 and 20. Talk about that a little bit later. If you're using cavalry, it's usually units between 1 and 10, again ranked up into 5s. So 5 in the front and 5 in the back. Then you have larger models that can be 3s, and then dragons that are on single bases. But because it gives you the base sizes for everything here, obviously all this is all sorted out in the official models, but because it gives you the base sizes here, it means that you can craft whatever miniatures you want to use, and just make sure that they're on the appropriate bases and ranked up in the right way, which I think is kind of nice. So it kind of gives you a little bit of leeway for playing around with different models from different manufacturers, basically. The key thing that I think is very important to go through is really kind of like setting up kingdoms and stuff. So in the game, when you come to start, well, you can play the game in two different ways. You can either play it as a straight up battle game, which you can do, and I'll talk about that in a second, or you can do campaign and kingdom building. So when you are creating a kingdom, you'll choose which one of your factions, or the one that you want to be your sort of main one, and that will have your capital city. So here we go. So here you go, a dwarven city. Boom. And if that is the capital, then you'll access to a whole bunch of different things. And then you then build up the different sections of your city in order to unlock different elements. So as you can see, having a dwarven city gives you access to a dwarf spellcaster of level 1 or 2. But if you go and find it and build a hermitage in your lands, then you'll get you can choose a dwarf spellcaster of a higher level. I think it's kind of nice. The other kind of thing as well is you've got like the listings here as well for kind of how rare they are as well. So you can think about using them in your games. To give you an idea of kind of like how a kingdom comes together, this is the kingdom sheet that I was playing around with when the game first came out. So as you can see, I had an elf capital, and then I built certain elements around it based on the units that I really wanted. And then because I wanted to have allies, I put a human city here and a dwarf city here. And that kind of meant that I could do a really nice sort of like core elven faction, and then build onto it with human and dwarven allies if I really wanted to. And then everything else around here was based around monsters and all the different types of units that you can pick as well. I think it's kind of nice. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of how you build up your stuff. And the focus is on it being kind of like this central section, as you see. These are the regions that you'll fight over in your campaigns. And then as enemies sort of take these, or you take these, you'll push in and sort of work your way towards the capital. Because once the capital gets burned down and all that kind of stuff, you can maybe like end the kingdom and that kind of thing. There's also space for naming the kingdom, having the current ruler, and all that kind of stuff as well. And notable events, which we'll talk about in a little bit later, actually. But that kind of gives you an idea of how you build up a kingdom. It's kind of nice, actually, because it allows you to kind of tailor things to what you think you're going to want. And it also helps with army building later on down the line. Everything has like a points value built into it. So when it comes to building an army and stuff, it's pretty easy to do. I think the army building in this game is way easier than a lot of other stuff. One of the nice things about the game as well is that you can kind of play it at a very small level and it still really works. So one of the things they suggest actually is that if you're going to be playing small games, there's actually, where's the cool list? There's like a little thing about building an army somewhere. It's not here. I don't know where it is. Anyway, when you here we go. So when it comes to assembling an army, it suggests that you like an 1,000 point game seems to be kind of like a sort of quick one that you can kind of do during the middle of a weekend or something. You might sit down and just play one-off games for 1,000 points and just get it done, right? To learn to play the game, you can do a quick beginner game using 1 to 2 boxes of Oathmark figures, 550 points. So I kind of did a little bit of working out on that. I worked out that you can, I'm just going to bring up my reference thing in a second because it helps me out with this. So you can buy one of the Dwarf Warrior boxes, or say, for example, an Orc Warrior box, and then buy one of the hero sets. So that's about £25, more or less, for the plastic models, which you get 30 in each. And then you've got the hero set, which gives you 3 or 4 metal heroes, and that's about £10 each from North Star. So if you take both of those and then you break them down into, so for example, my Dwarven list was a Dwarf Champion. So they're not really leaders in a way, but they kind of sit in units and act as kind of mega awesome character heroes that you can use to control the battlefield and fight in duels and all that kind of stuff. So I had a dwarf champion, and then I used the dwarf soldiers, which are the lowest points cost version of the various characters. A lot of people just play with warriors. So I had 10 dwarf soldiers and then another 10 dwarf soldiers. That's, ranked up with 2 sets of 10 models in each. And then I put together 2 units of 5 dwarven archers. So that's 30 models. You get 30 models in the box. I've made a starter force. The other side of things was to go with orcs. So if I scroll through to orcs on the other side, and orcs aren't inherently evil in this game, I should add. But obviously, if you're going to try and be doing something, I mean, how that is so first age. Anyway, if you're going to be doing a orc force, so my orc force was for exactly the same cost of about 35 quid. Again, this is buying it officially through North Star. You can get the sets down to, I think, £22.50. So 10% off, something like that, more or less, on the boxes. So my orc army for 549 points rather than 512 for the dwarves was an orc champion. I actually managed to get a level 2 spellcaster in, and then it was 2 units of 10 orc soldiers and 2 units of orc archers, which I thought was kind of good. So that kind of gives you a nice set of different models for you to use in your games. And for a relatively low cost of like 35 quid, you can build some quick and easy armies, which I think is quite nice. The other thing I did is I kind of looked at how much it would cost to build 1k armies and stuff. So for a 1k army, I was looking at, let's say we went back to dwarves. So say we wanted to go for something a bit bigger. So with dwarves, going back to them, I did a dwarf captain who is a relatively good leader figure. So a dwarf captain and a dwarf spellcaster. So basically using the same set that you had before for about a tenner. And then it was 10 dwarf soldiers, 10 dwarf soldiers, 10 archers, and 10 line breakers. So it was soldiers again. So again, you've got you need to buy 2 boxes of them. That's about 50 quid. And then you need to buy, because the dwarf warriors kit does soldiers and archers easily enough. And then you get yourself the line breakers, which is the slightly more heavy infantry versions. That'd be another 25. So, building on from what you've had previously, you've already built the soldiers and you've built most of the archers. You just need to build some more of those miniatures up, really. So you need to buy 2 more sets for about 50 quid or something, and you've got an 1,000-point army, which I think is quite nice. So, you can get away with building armies fairly easily, obviously, in this game. You can obviously throw in something a bit different. You can throw in war machines, so you've got heavy catapults. Just, go and buy some interesting models online. And then you have all the different monsters and all that kind of stuff as well thrown into the game as well. So actually getting started in Oathmark is fairly simple, really, in the grand scheme of things. And relatively low cost. I think the campaign mode is definitely the way to go with the game. But there's nothing to say that you can't just play around with whatever models you have in your collection and build up some interesting things. I mean, the dragon's so amazing, but the dragon's like 700 points. So, he's not going to go into an army normally. You're going to have to end up buying a lot of stuff in order to bring him into play. Turn it into a 2,000-point army or something bigger. And so the game kind of breaks down into different types of scenarios for you to play and how the campaign works and all that kind of stuff. You have a whole bunch of different special abilities for the various units, and then there's a selection of spells. These get added to in the other expansions, which we're going to have a look at in a second anyway. But yeah, it's a fairly simple, tight set of rules, which I think is really nice to play. I mean, the fact that the reference sheet is just basically 3 pages, and by that point you've already basically learned how to play the game, I think. You've got a really nice set of rules here from McCullough that kind of gives everyone exactly what they wanted from a rank and file game. without bogging it down in the minutiae, and making things very simple and easy to play, and does some interesting things with storytelling and stuff. Because as I say, I think the main focus of Oathmark is around the narrative and telling an interesting story. You want to try and forget that you're pushing little tiny fighting men around the tabletop, and I think Oathmark manages to do that. So yeah, I mean, it's also an amazing book as well. So that's the core rulebook for Oathmark, kind of an idea of how you build together sort of armies and all that kind of stuff as well. Just giving you an idea of how you'd start the game and everything like that. I then want to just kind of move on to some of the supplement stuff that's come out since then. So one of the first ones was Battlesworn. Well, all these are out now and they're available for you to buy. So you've got Battlesworn, which is kind of cool. The really big thing with this was the introduction of battle honors. So units can gain battle honors, which will allow them to use rerolls and all sorts of different things in game. This was the main kind of thrust of this supplement. All of these three books aren't integral to playing Oathmark. You don't need to buy them. I mean, they're like 15 quid each, something like that. You only really need this. But if you want some sort of additional bits and pieces, then this is kind of where you want to go. But yeah, so there's a breakdown of battle honors and sort of how they work. Essentially, it just allows you to throw special abilities and all sorts of different things into the mix for your armies, and how they're used on the tabletop. There's also a breakdown of how to use engineers for siege warfare and boats, so riverine craft, which I think is kind of nice. I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of these units come to life, because these haven't been properly shown off yet, but hopefully they're going to get turned into plastic boxes in the future. That's just a little thing. And then you have sort of military expeditions as well. So each of these books comes with like a little mini campaign thing for you to play. So if you're playing with a group of friends, you don't have to just play normal standard battles every time. You can actually go off and play through these interesting scenarios, which have major treasures for you to find and interesting things, allowing you to make very unique kingdoms and tell a little bit of a story as you go, which I think is kind of nice. There's also like event tables and all sorts of different things in there as well. Each of the books also comes with new spells and abilities. So these are new spells based around water, which I think is kind of cool. And those are the unique territories that you can find from doing the campaign. Won't dwell on those for too long, just in case. Just to give you a little bit of a spoiler warning there. But yeah, so interesting stuff in that one. As I say, I think the main focus that a lot of people will be using this for is the battle honors stuff, and maybe those new spells and things. But battle honors are a really nice way of kind of giving units a sense of a sense of something special about them, and making it feel like they have a veterancy and they're telling a story. I mean, one of the big things about this game is always working on the narrative, and I think that's where this shows up and definitely plays around with that nicely, which is very cool. So yeah, an interesting one. That one. It was a bit of a small one, I think, but it was definitely worth diving into, just to play around with some additional rules for kingdom building and narrative. The next one that we have is Oathbreakers. This is probably the one that I would suggest picking up the quickest, I guess, mainly because it adds a new force into the game. So undead weren't in the original game, but they've now been thrown into the rules with their own undead armies. One of the really nice things about the undead is that you can go with kind of like two flavors for them. So as I've mentioned in the previous video, one of the big things about Oathmark is that it kind of has this really nice Tolkien-esque feeling, and you can feel like the Middle Earth has kind of permeated every element of the game, really. But undead can be taken in two different flavors, and you can mix and match these. But you can either start with a necropolis, which gives you a revenant king, and that kind of allows you to go down the route of sort of the king of the dead kind of vibe. Obviously done very Celtically there, as you can see. So you can go down the route of like the king of the dead, and they're kind of dead and evil, but not really, kind of thing. So they can fight alongside the forces of good. Obviously, good and evil is very much a kind of wibbly-wobbly concept in Oathmark, as I've said. But that kind of gives you something to play around with if you want to do sort of the kingdoms of men and Minas Tirith rising up alongside the kingdoms of the dead to fight against Mordor and that kind of thing. You can also go down the route of using kind of a classic undead army, so you can have a necromancer leading the way. So you don't get the Revenant King or the Revenant Prince, but you do get the necromancer that can be level 1 to 5 or 1 to 3, as you can see there. And then you get revenants as sort of secondary characters. And then you can have skeletons and all sorts of different things to lead the way in battle. I really like the new models they did for the revenants. I think they're really cool. As I say, I really like that Celtic look. And so they've done a really nice job with this. So yeah, there's rules for using all of the undead in your games. Amazing artwork once again, as you can see. And different forces. Then you have rules for legendary heroes. So this is kind of a breakdown of whereas units before had like the bonuses of battle-ons and that kind of thing, legendary heroes step into the mix and they allow you to play around with champions, commanders, or spellcasters, and stuff like that in your army, and using them as heroes. Basically, they get and also monsters, as you can see, and basically they get new experience points that they can spend on not being dead, but heroic traits, as you can see there. So you can pick up these traits, and they kind of give your heroes a little bit of an edge, which I think is really nice. You won't kind of find these in normal games, obviously, although you could sort of say, maybe for this game, we will give 50 experience points for you to spend on heroes throughout your army if you're doing a one-off game, and you could choose some traits for them to have and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, as you can see, lots of different traits to choose from, all that give you different ways for you to take command of the battlefield and play some interesting games. And then you have another military expedition in here, which introduces new locations, focuses on the undead and all that kind of stuff. And then you have more events, tables to play around with, new territories for you to control, based on the new armies and stuff. And then you have the new special abilities as well, and new spells, because of course, obviously, the necromancers have spells to play around with. So you've got Bone Shards, Death Vision, Necrotic Touch, Poison Blade, and then Reanimate and Revive, as you might have guessed. So yes, nice ways for you to summon armies to the tabletop, including a full-on barrow worm, if you so desired. But yeah, so this one I think is probably one of the best ones to pick up, mainly because it comes with a new army for you to use, and obviously because kingdoms in Oathmark can be very flexible, I think this provides you with a really interesting way to add some colour to your forces and play around with the undead in your games. So there we go. Not necessarily evil, not necessarily good. But yeah, some cool Oathbreaker stuff. And obviously the title, Oathbreakers, very much in line with Tolkien and the Army of the Dead. The most recent one of them, the releases, is also the Bane of Kings. So this plays around again with units in your armies and allows them to adopt special formations. So one of the nice things about this one is, if we get to it here, so special formations. So these are ways for you to take particular terrain types in your games, in your campaign, and then unlock a formation that the unit can learn. So, for example, if you have a battle plane, this is available to soldiers, spearmen, and warriors who have a special ability shielding, and they must contain at least one full rank. So the points go up for the army because you've built them with the special ability in mind, and then you get the shield wall ability. Then you have one for chariots, so you have javelin storm for your skirmishers, you have phalanx for spearmen, you have the ability to change formations with square and skirmish. So this is kind of adding the complexity into the game that the core rules didn't do in a way. So the core rules kind of offered you the sort of basics of how to play a full-on rank and file game. This kind of throws some more stuff into the mix for you to try and make it a little bit more complicated if you want to. Think of this as kind of like the advanced rules section of the of the rulebook, if you're reading like the old big red Warhammer rulebook or something like that. You also have new units, so you've got the animated stones and the living statue and the Colossus. So if you want to throw some massive big dwarven statues into your battles, you can do, which is kind of cool. And then there was chariots for every single one of the factions so far. So they've all been done, which I think is kind of cool. Undead, I believe, got their chariots in the last set, the last book, the Oathbreakers book. So there we go. And then the other really fun thing for me was the addition of the Kingdoms events tables. So these can be rolled to show the passing of time and also bring together interesting things that have happened. These kind of, rather than you being the ones that have to come up with all of the narrative elements of how your campaign has changed and grown, these kind of throw some interesting ideas into the mix for you to sort of tinker with and tell stories. This is especially good, I think, if you're playing between two players and you want to really kind of beef things up story-wise between them. So, like, for example, you can have a traitor. When rolling to determine the battle type before your next game, your opponent may force you to re-roll your die. May re-roll their own die or both. So some interesting things there that will play around with how games are played in the future, which I think is really nice. You have internal events and how they play out, which is really nice. External events and how they are affecting your kingdom and everything else around you. Natural events that'll happen in the midst of games and also change things up. Magical events. Miscellaneous events. As you can see, all of the events. And then there's another military expedition, which makes use of the rules that we've just seen, which I think is really nice. So yeah, a new set of events for you to play around with, and a new appendices with the additional unique territories that have just been found as part of that campaign, new general spells for dealing with big monsters and stuff, and additional rules there that tie into the models in your armies. So really cool stuff there. I'd say that like each of these comes in around, I think this book is around £20-25, I think, maybe a little bit more. But when you factor that in alongside the cost of the basic army that I was mentioning just before then, so you may be spending £35 for the first couple of units you need for a starter game. That's obviously without going to the kingdom stuff. And then 20-ish odd pounds, maybe a little bit more for the rulebook there. In fact, I could probably look it up online while we're talking. You then have each of these separate books, which are designed as sort of supplementary ones. So yeah, the Battles of the Lost Age main book is £25. There we go. So that's right on the money there. Each of these books is £14.99, so 15 quid. They're not essential. I'd say if you want undead in your games, buy this one. If you want a more complex rank and file movement style game, buy this one. And also, obviously, it comes with some new units and stuff in there and the events tables. This, I don't think you need Battlesworn, but it comes with the Battle Honours stuff, which I think is really cool. So I'd say it's the least important of the bunch. I think these two are very good. Obviously, if one of your friends has one of these books, you can just sort of work together on the on these and just use them as a group, a collective. So you don't need to spend an extra £45 on 3 supplements in order to have a proper game of Oathmark. I think everything you need is basically within this book. Obviously, you can modify it and change it however you like, as we saw with the Silmarillion stuff, which I'll have linked for you to go and check out. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of sit down and give folks like a proper look over everything that's available for Oathmark at the moment, and kind of give you some tips for getting started as well. You know, getting those starter armies together. You know, £35 for a starter army alongside £25 for the book, I think is pretty good. You could obviously share the cost of the book and then just buy each of the plastic models for yourself and a friend between yourselves, and you've pretty much got everything sorted. You need to start playing a first couple of games at that lower level, and then it doesn't cost much more to take things up to the next level and play it like 1,000 points, and then maybe put together your proper campaign on the tabletop and play out the stories and stuff. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful and kind of give you a breakdown of all the different rules and that kind of stuff. I'm going to have links down in the comments where I'll have full written reviews from my blog covering the core rules of 2 different parts. It was a very big project, that one, as well as some breakdowns on some of the supplements as well. Just as I mentioned again as well, I am also putting together this competition. So if we get to 1,000 subscribers, I will be giving away Saruman and Grima for you to paint and use as you wish, as a lovely gift for everyone who's been part of the community and been doing really nice stuff in the last couple of months. Yeah, thank you again everyone for watching. Hopefully this has been helpful. Make sure to comment, like, share and subscribe. Go and check out that post where you can win Saruman and Grima for yourself. You've got to comment down below, 1 per person, and you have to be subscribed. I can check if you're subscribed, so you can't get away with that. And I'll send it to someone as soon as we hit 1,000 subscribers. But yeah, just again, following on from last week, thought it'd be fun to talk about Oathmark and what it kind of brings to the table. I might look at sort of showing off different army builds and stuff in a future video and that kind of thing. But, you know, this is kind of Lord of the Rings adjacent, I would guess, because we're talking about first stage stuff last week, weren't we? But yeah, hopefully this has been helpful and will give you something to think about when it comes to putting together interesting armies on the tabletop. I'm going to head off now. Thank you very much, as always. Comment, like, share, and subscribe. If you like what I do, make sure to drop a little bit of a donation into the Ko-fi pot, as it were, which is linked down below as well. And all the proceeds go towards buying new books and all that kind of stuff. I've had some donations recently, and it was very, very well received. I was able to buy some more books and that kind of stuff as well to have a look through and that kind of stuff. So yeah, thanks again. I'm going to stop waffling now. I'll see folks in another video. There'll be a little kind of like hobby update as well later today. The little sort of bonus thing. And yeah, I'll be back in another video very soon. Bye for now.